This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
You Dak Prescott haters like to take advantage of every opportunity that you get to bag on him.
Come on.
Give the dude his flowers for once. That was a pretty darn good performance. Welcome to week 2 of the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Mike Leslie, Andrew Cely, here with you once again. It's 0-1. It's 0-1 for the Dallas Cowboys. And this is the Dallas Cowboys we're talking about. There's no such thing as a moral victory in the Dallas Cowboys world. However, things to build upon at the very least.
100%. I'm more excited about how this season is going to turn out one way or another, at least tuning in week to week. This felt like it was going to be a slog, at least in the early goings, to see how this team would be. Now, offense looks good. Defense looks better than expected, at least based off of the post-weather delay stuff. But we'll get into all of that. We got a lot to dissect from that game, so let's just get right into it with what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
Well, just like most of America thought, Cowboys are 0-1, but it's a better 0-1 than we thought. If you just heard this, it's because Mike looked at this script beforehand. A hard-fought loss against the defending champion Eagles on banner night. A lot to dissect. And to honor the NFL's return, it's the return of no fence riding. We'll look at the NFL's inconsistent enforcement of player expression. That's what's on the show, Mike. Now who's on the show?
Not Michelle, because we're doing no fence riding.
Jonah
Javad from WFAA joining us. It's an all-WFAA show tonight. Jonah, we appreciate you being with us. What did you think of the Dallas Cowboys debut?
Yeah, listen, I'm not a huge fan of moral victories and defeats, but they really impressed me. They looked way more buttoned up than I expected. And for a first-time NFL head coach in Brian Schottenheimer to have his group ready to go on the road on an Eagles banner night and to have really a chance, multiple chances there towards the end of that game that had that crazy weather delay, all the things that went into that wild game to still have a chance towards the end against the reigning champs, I thought kind of spoke to, maybe how solid he's built that culture. That's been the talking point all year or all offseason is this culture legit? And it'll still have to get tested as the year goes on.
Yeah.
But the early answer to me is that the Cowboys have something here. And are they good enough to make a run? I don't know. But early returns that was better than I think a lot of people expected.
So, Mike, 2 questions for you. First of all, do you put more stock in the Cowboys team that we saw pre-weather delay or post-weather delay? That was essentially a shutout of the defending champs and looked really good against the run. But the first half looked way better on offense and way more efficient. Let's start on that part.
Yeah, because it cuts both ways, really.
Right.
Because pre-weather delay, the offense looked great, but the defense looked quite porous. Post-weather delay, offense went to sleep. CeeDee Lamb, I don't ever expect that type of thing from him again, but oh my. But yeah, it's very hard to really decide what's reality for this football team based on what we saw in week 1. I do like Jonah's point about Brian Schottenheimer. I think I was excited to see what it would look like under Brian Schottenheimer first time out of the gates, and I'm encouraged by what we saw from Brian Schottenheimer first time out of the gates. I thought he called a really good game. I thought he handled the minutia, the clock. He handled a lot of those elements that are important for a head coach to be able to manage. He did all of those things well. If there's one big takeaway, because a lot of the things about this football team are about the same as they were last year. You've got the same quarterback, except for now you have him healthy. There's a lot of similarity in the offensive side of the ball, except for George Pickens. There's a lot of similarity on the defensive side of the ball, except for the lack of Micah Parsons. The newness was the coach, and that newness, I walk away going, okay, I like what we're seeing here.
Jonah, which is the real Cowboys team?
I know no fence riding is coming up later, and I really want to ride it right now. And just maybe it's split the difference. I think this offense is a lot better than they showed, post-weather delay. It will take some time to probably figure out a little bit schematically and with their changes. But I lean towards this offense being able to put up, probably 24 points a game, at minimum, I would hope. If they can get back on track. I'd like to see more from George Pickens. I really felt like he had a really quiet debut. And granted, he did, draw the penalty on a ball that probably should have caught or could have caught.
Sure.
Looked like he sold it a little bit to get the flag, but in general with him, you bring him into and call him a 1B. He looked like a 2B. It looked like a glorified Michael Gallup from past years. So I'd like to see his level of involvement be more. Granted, what the defense showed against the Eagles, or what the defense showed against the Eagles, defense showed against the Cowboys, Cely was open a lot.
Yeah.
So just take what you have, and so I don't really necessarily put that on George or the play calling, but I think in the totality of the season, we are going to need to see more from George Pickens if this Cowboys offense is to reach its ceiling.
I think some of that is just Dak's comfort level. When the play breaks down or things happen, he knows who to go to, and that's 88. And usually 88's going to be open, as he showed. Again, we don't expect him to whiff on some of those big plays, because if he makes one of those catches, we're talking about a very different outcome here.
Not only a different outcome, but I don't think we're even talking about the offense post-weather delay.
Exactly.
If that happens, because they probably go in and score, and they score 27 in the game, and nobody's blinking at 27 points, and there's not that goose egg in the second half, and this whole thing looks and feels a lot different.
Right. So my other question I was going to bring up, was this game more about how Dallas looked or how Philly looked? Because I do think a lot of Dallas's early offensive success was because the Phillies were kind of grandstanding a little bit. They were puffing out their chest, taking dumb fouls, letting Dallas convert on 3rd and longs with stupid penalties. I mean, like, this felt
they
like
helped them. Yeah.
No, absolutely. But I came away as impressed as I was where Dallas was concerned. I came away a little bit frustrated with how Philly played.
I feel like it matters that they didn't have Jalen Carter.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a big factor in why they didn't look the way that we would expect the defending champions to look. That whole saga was entertaining at the very least. Also not what you want to see really on either side. Now, I will absolutely grant you that there's a big difference between spitting on the ground and spitting on a person. There's a giant chasm there. One is an ejectable offense, clearly, as we learned on Thursday night. The other is not, and the other, well, it wasn't seen, so that probably matters why it wasn't penalized either. But I don't even think that was a penalizable offense because he spit on the ground. The nod and the smile makes you wonder a little bit about what was in Dak's head in the moment.
A little bit of poking the bear, that's all I'm going to say.
But yes, you're not getting flagged for poking the bear, and there's really not anything fundamentally wrong with poking the bear. He just got the bear to attack.
Usually it ends up bad in that situation. Jonah, your main takeaway from the game is what as we move on now on to week 2 and a full week of preparation?
I would say that it was a good place to start. I think across week 1, and this is historic for the NFL, week 1 is such a weird week. I mean, teams are still figuring out what their identity is, who their playmakers are going to be. Every week it feels like, every year week 1 is the aberration. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock into it. It's just one out of, the 17 that, we can, use to define this Cowboys team. So I'm going to kind of reserve my judgment a bit there. And I know that's not a sexy answer, but I like what I saw from them. I need to see more. And, they have a chance to go out and show that next week.
Not a bad spot for them to be sitting heading into week 2 against a Giants team that did not look good today. Somebody who also played today.
Oh, really?
Used to wear number 11 here in town. He wears number 1 somewhere else. We'll talk a little bit about that young man. We'll also talk about the Texas Rangers continuing their surge after this.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
The Texas Rangers wrapped up their series with the Astros with a 4-2 victory, and they take the series 2-1. The Rangers didn't make up any ground on the Mariners, though. Seattle still 1.5 games ahead of Texas for the final AL wildcard spot. And Carlos Alcaraz is back on top. He takes down Yannick Sinner in 4 sets, 6-1, 3-6, 6-1, and 6-4 to win the U.S. Open. It's his second U.S. Open title and 6th Grand Slam overall. Was not expecting Carlos Alcaraz to wear pink in the final today. That was an interesting choice. But aside from that,
real men wear pink.
Hey, listen, not complaining about the color choice, just it was a very vibrant color choice when you're used to black, white, as something a little more serious for the occasion. However,
you're not going to get a whole lot of support from me or from
I'm
Jonah
not ragging
bagging
on
on
the
a guy
paint.
where like we're
I'm
both
not
prone to
ragging
be
on
a
the
little
paint.
bit wild.
It
so.
was just a flamboyant choice. That's all I'm saying. It was new for me to see him in that color, just like it was new for me to see Micah Parsons walk out in green and gold.
Yes, it was.
At Lambeau Field today. Guys, your first impressions of Micah as a Packer were what? Let's start with Jonah.
You look like Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
I mean, for a guy that has barely done any on-field work this offseason, team field work, he looked good. Had a sack, got some pressures. The pressures were impactful. And the Packers beat the Lions, a really good Lions team, and a team that the Packers have struggled to play against the last few years. So all in all, I feel like if you're Micah, you're feeling great. Packers Nation's got to feel great about having him after the start he's had, and he's only going to get better. So, to me, he looked like the player that Cowboys fans have been watching for the last few years. And I did find it notable on the broadcast. I don't know if you guys caught this as well. Was it? I think it was Tony Romo.
It was
who brought
Nance and
up
Romo. I know exactly where you're going with this.
That the Lions were less. They were more. They felt better about going against Micah Parsons than they did against Kenny Clark, which is interesting given how the final score ended up.
The exact line from Nance, talking about what Dan Campbell and the Lions staff said to him during their production meeting this week, was that they were more relieved. Now, this wasn't, let me be clear, this wasn't a line from Campbell. This was the inference that both Nance and Romo, they were clear that they didn't say this, they just kind of implied it. But the implication, the inference that Nance and Romo both said they took from meeting with the Lions coaching staff, in particular Dan Campbell, was that they were more relieved to not have to face Kenny Clark than they were worried to face Micah Parsons. That's a mouthful, and that's coming from a guy in Dan Campbell who, frankly, I trust his football opinion more than I trust Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones' football opinion. So my eyes definitely got a little bigger when I heard that comment. That was very interesting.
And I do think, as a quick follow-up, Kenny Clark looked really good in his debut. He was a really solid rock in the middle for the Cowboys. So as the Kenny Clark apologist on the panel here, I liked it when Dallas got him, but I am also happy Micah Parsons is in Green Bay. Go ahead.
I would imagine so. As our resident Packers fan, he's just fine with seeing number one out there terrorizing Jared Goff. He only played 29 snaps.
I would add this. I think probably part of the reason why Dan Campbell and the Lions felt that way is because they've got really good tackles, and Penei Sewell's amazing. So
exactly,
you feel more confident against him versus Micah versus maybe an interior player. And in an interior rush can really just be a game record too. So I see the vision there, but let's scoreboard, said it all today.
Parsons played in total 29 of the 65 defensive snaps, 3 pressures in total. One of them led to a negative 2-yard reception, one led to a pick, one led to his sack. So for those of you that were just looking at the box score and thinking he didn't make an impact, look a little harder than just that. Let's get to the Texas Rangers because they have been really, really interesting and getting more interesting over the course of the last couple of weeks on this surge, and now just knocking on the door of a playoff spot at this point, taking 2 of 3 against the Astros this weekend.
When Seager went to the IL, I kind of, wrote the season out. I mean, because when
Eovaldi went out for the year,
their 2 best players went to the IL. I would imagine most people probably felt like, it's probably ball game on the season, just because the odds of doing it with a bunch of backups and call-ups is unlikely. Now, sometimes teams can rally. They can use those types of, changes to the lineup as, a way to get going. And they have. I mean, I'm super surprised by it, no doubt. Can they sustain it and finally get over the hump and break through and get that wild card spot? I don't know, because it feels like they've been on a really good stretch for 2-3 weeks now. You just kind of wait for that bottom to fall out, but really impressive. I give Boch and the group a lot of credit for what they've done the last few weeks.
They're doing this with Cody Freeman and Alejandro Osuna and Mike Hellman and Dylan Moore, and how many guys does the average Rangers fan look at the lineup and go, who are these people?
They're scoring.
And yet they're winning game
They're
after
scoring.
game after game. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive to watch. And granted, the season's wrapping up here, so we're seeing if they can sustain it, but like they don't have a lot of time to sustain it here. A couple more series, we'll see if they can pull this out. When
They're
we come
playing
back,
meaningful September baseball, and how many people thought that was going to be the case?
not a couple weeks ago. When we come back, no fence riding. Stay with us. So good to hear that music again. Welcome back to everyone except Michelle's favorite game, No Fence Riding. For the uninitiated, I have a series of statements. The idea is simple. Our panel has to decide which of the side of the fence that they are on, no waffling, or they get called out. Let's get right into it. The No Fun League needs to pick a side on player expression. On the one hand, everyone can celebrate. After a turnover, after a touchdown, do what you want, run a play. It can be as elaborate as your heart desires, but spend a second and a half staring at a guy after a big tackle, that's a flag. That's 15 yards. It's like a tech after a big dunk. Just a buzzkill. Either you want the emotion or you don't. Jonah, start us off here. What do you think?
Absolutely. I am a big believer that players should be able to celebrate touchdown dances, taunt. Staring over a player after making a big sack is, now a big penalty. I hate that so much. I think it makes watching football a little bit more lame and sanitized. I'm a big believer in player expression, enjoying the game. Spitting on a player goes too far, in my estimation. But celebrate. Listen, my favorite player growing up was Chad Johnson. So you can figure out where I kind of stand on player expression.
So Chad Johnson, hang on. Who's that? I don't recognize that name.
8-5, baby.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Mike.
So Jonah's good with player expression, but not good with player expectoration, is basically what I took from that.
Mike, where are you on this?
Listen, I am and always have been in basically the same place. I've always been in favor of player expression. I've always been in favor of certainly celebrating at minimum. The taunting, I can understand wanting to at least draw a line there, but I'm still generally heavily in whichever side of the screen Jonah's on. I've been in your camp on this for a very long time. All I will say is this: watching the Cowboys-Eagles game on Thursday night with my 4-year-old daughter sitting next to me, and having her see the Jalen Carter spitting moment, and I know we're putting that in a different bucket, but I understood a little bit more of where the league is coming from, because it was the first time that I had ever had a moment like that where I had to explain to her, hey, this is not how we behave, this is not what we do. So again, the taunting is where I can at least understand a piece of it.
All right, moving on here. Number 2, the greats never lose their shine. I get it. Belichick, Rodgers, Giants of the game have been taking it on the chin lately, digging for gold in odd spots, but if we spent more than 5 seconds looking at the majority of the busts in Canton, we'd see a ton of black marks on their ledger too. The idea that anything that happens on the field in the next year or so is some kind of referendum on either of them or any of these big guys that are in the waning stages of their career, it's insane and a little bit irresponsible. Does it help them if they struggle? No, but let's not pretend that their legacy is up for debate every play. Mike, what do you think?
I feel like most of this is coming from the Packers fan, Aaron Rodgers fan, and
I was throwing Belichick in there. I'm not dumping on him for the TCU loss, but
no, I understand, and I'm not saying that you are, but I feel like that's where this emotion is coming from, right?
I mean, it might be part of it, but Russell Wilson's running into it today too, so there's that.
That's another good example of somebody that the shine has come off of a little bit. I feel like with Rodgers, a lot of the distaste for him has less to do with his play on the field and more to do with his personality.
No, but it's affecting how people think he
guy.
plays. It's affecting how people think he plays. That's part of it. Like their assessment of him over the past couple of years when he's been dealing with injury and whatnot. I'm getting off topic here. Jonah, jump in here. What do you think?
Very few players and coaches ride off into the sunset the way, Disney would love to dream it up. It feels like for the most part, if you're some superstar player, future Hall of Famer, that rarely you get to go out on, your own terms or the way you'd want to. So I think for the most part, they lose their shine towards the end. I find it nice when guys go out, how they want. I think Peyton Manning rode off into the sunset. That's kind of cool. But
with a win, but an interception.
Even Brady, he got the Super Bowl in Tampa, but his last season wasn't a championship. So even for the greatest ever, it's not always perfect at the end.
Even for MJ, we do it to MJ. Everybody looks at his Wizards years. I'm sure if LeBron has a bad year at some point, whether it's this year or if he keeps playing beyond that, invariably people are going to bag on it. See, he wasn't as good as. It will be stupid. I'm with you. It's ridiculous. Aaron Rodgers still has all those MVPs in the Super Bowl and all the things that he accomplished.
You're focusing on the Rodgers part of it. The intro was a little bit more
Belichick.
Belichick
Packers fan.
That's all I'm saying. There's a lot more Belichick than I was trying to get into this. All right, last but not least, just a quick one here. We all need a no-show job. That's all this is. Anyone disagree with this? Jonah, what do you think?
Don't we all already kind of have one?
Wait, hang on. What? What? Jonah should have been in here. That's part of it, right? He's making money staying at home.
Jonah's got the no-show job today, working from Rockwall.
I just want you all to know that if you need any landscaping or treescaping done, call me.
Jonah, thank you so much for making the time.
JJ2 LLC.
Exactly. Thank you so much for making the time out of your very busy day to pop up on Zoom for us instead of coming to the studio. We really appreciate you. Stay with us. Mike's Final Take coming up next.
I know all Cowboys fans would like to put like a moratorium on talking about Micah Parsons at least for the next 2 weeks until it is Cowboys-Packers week. And honestly, I get it. And now that there is football to talk about, I think we're all ready to kind of turn the page. And so too is Sam Williams. And I think Sam Williams was probably speaking for a number of Cowboys players in that locker room when he said what he said after the game on Thursday night in Philadelphia. Said, listen, he's not here anymore. I don't want to be asked about him anymore. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, listen, we're here to play football. And it was very clear that they are ready to turn the page and just focus on now the next opponent, which is the New York Giants coming to Dallas a week from today. This team is not turtling in the absence of Micah Parsons, and that at the very least is impressive. We'll see whether or not it matters, but the way the defense responded in the second half on Thursday night against Philly has to at least be something of a positive for you to latch on to if you're a Cowboys fan.
I cannot wait to continue the ultimate Green Bay sports show next
Buddy,
week.
3 weeks from now, that's all it's going to be, obviously, because it's going to be
fantastic.
Packers-Cowboys, and that will be the only storyline. But
I'm just
I
happy.
don't mind, talking about something else for a
He
little
looks
while.
good in green and gold. That's all I got to say. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys for watching.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.